The stars of the Empire's border region burned in cold silence. Alien patrol fleets moved in perfect formation, shining metal against the endless black. For the Empire, this was routine. For centuries, they had ruled this sector of the galaxy. Their power was unmatched. Their fleets vast, their enemies crushed before they could even dream of victory. The Empire was feared, and fear was the tool that kept its borders safe. But on this night, something strange appeared at the edge of their scanners. At first, the operators laughed. A single ship was moving toward the border. No fleet, no escort, no warning signals, just one massive shape drifting slowly through the void. It was not even sending identification codes. To the proud soldiers of the Empire, it seemed foolish, almost insulting. Who would dare enter their space so carelessly? The commander of the border station ordered a scan. The results only brought confusion. The vessel was enormous, larger than the Empire's own dreadnoughts, yet its design was unlike anything recorded. Its shape was brutal and simple, built for function, not beauty. It carried no symbols, no banners, no signs of the races known across the stars. Primitive, one officer muttered. Look at the hull plating. It looks like old iron, the others laughed. They thought it was some ancient relic, a forgotten warship drifting without purpose. Perhaps it belonged to a dead race, one erased long ago by the Empire's hand. The commander smirked, confident that whatever it was, it could not possibly threaten the might of the Empire. And yet, something about the readings was wrong. The ship carried an energy core that did not match any known technology. Its signature was raw, burning, alive, almost violent in nature. The scanners could not measure its full depth, as if the ship was hiding an ocean of power beneath a thin shell of metal. Every attempt to identify the technology ended in static. The laughter in the command deck began to fade. Messages were sent. Warnings were broadcast. You are entering Imperial space. Identify yourself or be destroyed. The strange vessel gave no reply. It continued forward steady and silent, ignoring all threats. Its engines glowed with an unnatural light, steady and strong, as though nothing in the galaxy could slow it down. The border station grew tense. The commander clenched his jaw. If this intruder thought silence would protect it, it was wrong. The Empire did not forgive trespassers. A squadron of interceptors was dispatched. Sleek alien ships with wings of silver darted toward the intruder, weapons armed and shields glowing. The patrol fleet was meant to intimidate, to remind anyone who dared cross the border that they were facing gods of war. But the unknown ship did not even turn its guns. The interceptors fired, streams of plasma and bolts of antimatter crossing the void. For a moment the sky burned with fire, yet when the glow cleared, the massive vessel remained untouched. The blast struck its armor and vanished like drops of rain against stone. Its hull absorbed the fury as if it had been nothing at all. Confusion spread through the pilots. Shields? No. No reading of shields. The commander barked new orders. Increase firepower. Surround it. The squadron obeyed. They unleashed their strongest weapons, hoping to crush the vessel under sheer force. But then something impossible happened. One of the interceptors was destroyed without a sound. No missile was seen. No beam of light fired. It was as if space itself had folded, swallowing the ship whole. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, erased. The other pilots screamed in panic, breaking formation. What was that? Impossible, no weapon can. But the truth was undeniable. This intruder, silent and unmoving, had wiped one of their ships away with a power they could not even understand. The squadron retreated. They had no choice. Fear began to creep into their voices, a fear they had never known before. The Empire was not supposed to fear. The Empire was supposed to make others fear. On the border station, silence filled the command deck. The commander felt sweat on his brow. His pride told him to order another attack, to unleash the full fleet, to crush this unknown intruder. But his instincts whispered something else, something darker. This was not just another ship. This was something new. Something dangerous. The unknown battleship continued forward, slow and steady. It did not chase the fleeing interceptors. It did not fire again. It simply crossed the border, as if the Empire's power meant nothing, as if the fleets of 1,000 systems were nothing more than shadows before its path. The officers whispered among themselves. What kind of ship is that? Who built it? No race would dare, no race has such power. And then a rumor began. A whisper among the lower soldiers, spreading like fire. They said the vessel was human. The word meant nothing to most. Humanity was a forgotten name. a race barely spoken of in the records of the Empire. They had been small, weak, unimportant. Some believed they were extinct, wiped out in wars long ago. But if this ship was human, then what had happened to them? What had they become? The commander of the station stared at the screen, watching the battleship drift deeper into Imperial space. He tried to steady his voice, but inside, he felt a weight pressing against his chest. For the first time in his career, he felt powerless, and somewhere deep inside, the Empire itself felt the same. Because one truth had already begun to spread across the galaxy. Human battleship had entered the Empire's space, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Empire was never used to silence. Usually when they threatened, others begged for mercy. When they commanded, others obeyed. But now, one ship had crossed their space, ignored their orders, and destroyed a patrol without explanation. On the surface, the Empire laughed. Their leaders made speeches. "It is only one ship," they declared. "A relic from a forgotten world. It will fall like all the rest." The broadcasts were filled with mockery, words designed to calm their citizens and remind them that the Empire was still in control. But behind closed doors, in secret chambers, the truth was not so easy to ignore. Admirals gathered around glowing holograms of the intruder. The image was crude compared to their sleek and elegant designs. The hull looked thick, almost clumsy, built with layers of armor that should have been outdated centuries ago. To the eyes of the Empire's engineers, it was a joke. But when they ran the battle data, the laughter stopped. Their best weapons had done nothing. Their fastest interceptors had been erased without warning, and the ship's power core still burned with unreadable energy. The readings made no sense. It was like staring into a star and trying to understand its heart. Yet pride was dangerous, and the Empire had too much of it. Orders were sent to the front lines. Capture the intruder alive. If possible, take it apart piece by piece and show the galaxy that no one defied the Empire. Soon more fleets gathered along the intruder's path. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers, hundreds of ships filled the stars with light. The humans, if they truly were human, would learn what it meant to challenge the rulers of the galaxy. But as the fleets prepared, the strange battleship continued on its path. It moved slowly, not rushing, not hiding, as if it was walking through the stars with infinite patience. It did not fire, it did not send threats. It simply moved forward. This calmness made the soldiers uneasy. Some whispered among themselves, "What kind of fools are they entering alone?" Others answered in hushed voices, "Not fools, confident." The tension grew worse when they realized the ship's scanners were active. The intruder was not blind, it was watching. Every move of the Empire's fleets was being studied, measured, understood. At last, the command was given. The fleet surged forward. Wave after wave of alien ships locked weapons and opened fire. The darkness of space turned bright with plasma bolts, laser storms, and missiles that carried the firepower of entire planets. To any other ship, the attack would have been death. But to the human battleship, it was nothing more than rain on steel. The blasts slammed against its hull. Shields did not shimmer, armor did not crack. The ship absorbed it all in silence. Smoke did not rise, metal did not burn. The mighty fleet of the Empire had just thrown its strongest punch, and the intruder had not even staggered. The laughter that once filled the command channels turned to silence. And then, the ship answered. It did not fire cannons nor unleash missiles. Instead, space itself twisted around it. A pulse of invisible force rippled outward, touching the nearest enemy cruiser. In one instant, the cruiser vanished. There was no explosion, no wreckage, just silence, as though the ship had been erased from existence. The fleets panicked. Warnings filled the channels. "Shields are useless. Repeat, shields are useless." Another pulse. Another ship gone. And still the battleship did not advance. It did not seek blood. It only removed obstacles, erasing one ship at a time, making the Empire's massive fleets feel as powerless as children standing before a storm. The admirals watching from their war rooms clenched their fists. Pride turned to anger. Anger turned to fear. Why do they not conquer? Why do they not destroy everything? One asked, his voice shaking. No one had an answer. The truth was more terrifying than war itself. The intruder was not fighting for conquest. It was showing restraint. It was proving a point. And the point was clear. If it wanted, it could end them all. Whispers spread through the lower soldiers. Some remembered the rumor, the name whispered in secret. Human. The word carried no weight before. Now it carried fear. Who were these humans if a single ship of theirs could humiliate the Empire's greatest fleets? How many of these ships did they have? Was this one vessel only the beginning? The Empire's citizens, watching from afar, no longer laughed. Markets trembled, leaders grew restless, and families whispered about war. Children asked questions their parents could not answer. Are we safe? No one knew. The battleship, after erasing a handful of cruisers, stopped firing. It let the rest of the fleet scatter in panic. Then, without a single word, it continued its journey deeper into Imperial space, silent and unstoppable. The admirals felt rage at this insult, but beneath the rage, fear crawled into their bones. For the first time, the Empire had not been the predator. For the first time, they had been prey, and all of this, every humiliation, every whisper of fear, came not from an armada, not from an empire, not from a galactic power. It came from one ship, and if the whispers were true, it came from humans, a race the galaxy had forgotten, a race the Empire had mocked, a race that had now returned, not with words, but with power. The Empire's fear grew in silence, and the galaxy trembled with it. The Empire's fleet scattered after their humiliating defeat, but the unknown battleship did not chase. It continued on its path, silent, steady, and unshaken. To many, the silence was worse than an attack. If it had destroyed everything in its way, the Empire could have declared war. They could have painted the intruder as a monster, a common enemy to unite against. But silence left questions, and questions brought fear. Across the galaxy, voices argued. Some leaders said it was a rogue machine, a ghost ship drifting with ancient power. Others whispered that it was human. The word carried a strange weight now, forgotten by most, dismissed as weak by those who remembered. Humanity had been a shadow in the records of the Empire, but if this ship was theirs, then they were not gone. They had only been waiting. The waiting ended when the battleship finally spoke. It happened without warning. In every system it passed, comms channels opened by themselves. Soldiers, commanders, citizens, even children at home, all heard the same voice. Calm, steady, human. "We are not here to conquer," the voice said. "We are here because the galaxy must change." The words were simple, but they fell like a hammer. Entire command decks froze. Citizens leaned closer to their screens. Even the rulers of the Empire sat in silence, unable to find their breath. It was not just what the voice said, it was how it said it. No anger. No mockery, no fear. It spoke as if it already understood everything, as if it carried a truth no one else could deny. Admiral Kaylor, one of the Empire's oldest commanders, slammed his fist against the table. "A lie," he shouted. "If they did not want conquest, why trespass? Why destroy our ships?" But deep in his chest, Kaylor felt the same unease as everyone else. The voice had not sounded like an invader. It had sounded like a teacher. Or worse, like a judge. The message repeated only once more before the comms cut. The battleship fell silent again, moving deeper into Imperial territory. Whispers spread like fire. Some believed the humans had returned to punish the Empire for centuries of arrogance. Others said they had come as saviors to free the galaxy from tyranny. But all agreed on one thing. The intruder was no accident. It had chosen its path, and it had chosen its words carefully. Inside the Empire's High Council, panic grew. Leaders shouted over one another, each demanding action. Some wanted the ship destroyed at any cost. Others wanted to negotiate. A few, their voices small but trembling, suggested surrender. Surrender was unthinkable. The Empire had never surrendered, yet the fact that the word was spoken at all showed how much the battleship had shaken them. Meanwhile, on the border worlds, ordinary citizens watched the sky with fear. Mothers held their children tighter. Farmers stopped their work to stare at the horizon, as if expecting the ship to appear above them. Soldiers whispered in the barracks, asking each other the question no one could answer. How many of them are there? Was this one ship the beginning of a fleet? Or was it simply a messenger, a shadow of something greater waiting beyond the stars? The voice had not promised war, but it had promised change. And in the galaxy, change was often more terrifying than battle. On one remote station, a young officer named Relin listened to the recording again and again. There was something in the human's tone that haunted him. It was not cruelty. It was not mercy either. It was certainty. Relin whispered to himself. They already know how this ends. And maybe they did. The battleship, still moving without haste, passed into another system. The Empire sent ships to follow, but they kept their distance. No one dared attack after the last humiliation. Instead, they watched powerless as the ship scanned planets, moons, and stations as if it were taking notes. It was not an enemy. It was a judge gathering evidence. Then once again the voice returned. Power has blinded you. Fear has ruled you. But no empire lasts forever. The future belongs to those who endure. The words echoed through every broadcast network. In the streets of the Empire's great cities, people stopped walking. In factories, machines went quiet. Even in the royal palace, the rulers sat frozen. For the first time in generations, the galaxy had heard humanity speak, and they trembled. The Empire tried to silence the recordings, but it was too late. The message had already spread beyond their borders. Other civilizations were listening. Old enemies of the Empire smiled in secret. Traitors and smugglers whispered in the shadows. Rebellions long crushed began to stir again. The human battleship had not fired a shot in days, yet it had done more damage than any weapon could. It had given the galaxy hope, and hope was more dangerous than war. The Empire could not ignore the insult any longer. The battleship had destroyed their fleets without effort, crossed their borders without permission, and spoken to their people as if it ruled them. If the Empire stayed silent, the galaxy would think it was weak, so the order was given: unleash the Grand Fleet. It was a fleet that had ended wars. Thousands of ships, from fast interceptors to massive carriers, were summoned. The sky above Imperial space burned with the light of engines as the armada gathered. It was said that no force in the galaxy could stand against it. And yet this armada had been summoned not to face an empire, not to fight a rebellion, but to stop one ship. The admirals spoke with pride. This intruder will learn the truth. One ship cannot stand against the Empire. But in their eyes, behind the bravado, there was doubt. The human battleship arrived in the system of Orvalis, a proud jewel of the Empire. Towering stations orbited the planet, and entire fleets stood waiting. Civilians watched from below, staring up at the strange object in their sky. The battleship appeared in orbit without sound. Its engines glowed faintly, its weapons still silent. It did not fire first. It simply floated as if testing the patience of the Empire. The command was given. The Grand Fleet opened fire. The sky erupted. Thousands of cannons roared at once. Missiles streaked like falling stars. Beams of plasma and antimatter cut through the void, crossing over each other in waves of destruction. The planet below shook from the echo of so many weapons, and yet the battleship remained. The blast struck, but its hull absorbed them all. No shields shimmered. No armor cracked. It was as if the ship had been carved from the heart of a star itself. The Empire's greatest weapons, weapons that had erased entire civilizations, could not even scratch its surface. Panic spread through the ranks. Some ships pulled back, afraid to waste their energy. Others pushed forward, desperate to prove they could hurt it. But all of them failed. Then, at last, the battleship answered. Its hull shifted, and from it emerged swarms of machines, drones shaped like dark blades, small but impossibly fast. They moved at speeds no Imperial sensors could track. One moment they were dots, the next they tore through cruisers, slicing hulls apart like paper. The admiral screamed orders. "Form shields! Protect the carriers!" But it was too late. The drones moved like a living storm, weaving between ships, cutting them down in silence. Explosions dotted the sky. The proud Grand Fleet was being shredded before it could even regroup, and the battleship itself had not yet fired a single cannon. Then, the true weapon revealed itself. Ripple of light expanded outward from the battleship. Slow at first, then faster. Ships caught in its path simply vanished. There was no fire, no wreckage, no survivors. They were gone, erased as if they had never existed. Entire formations disappeared in the blink of an eye. The admiral shouted in disbelief. What kind of weapon is that? None of their science could explain it. The pulse bent reality itself. It was not destruction, it was erasure. The soldiers lost their courage. Fleets that had stood proudly for centuries broke apart, scattering like frightened insects. Commanders begged for retreat. Some ships even shut down their weapons, hoping surrender would save them. But the battleship did not chase. It allowed them to flee. The voice returned across the comms, calm and steady, echoing through the burning system. This was your test. Power built on fear is fragile. You have seen its end. The message cut and silence followed. On the surface of Orvalis, billions stared at the sky. They had seen their proud defenders collapse like children before a storm. They had heard the human voice speak as if it already knew the future, and deep inside something changed. The people no longer looked to the Empire for safety. They looked to the unknown. The Council of the Empire sat in silence that night. The fleet they had believed undefeatable was broken. Their citizens whispered about rebellion. Their enemies whispered about alliances. All of this caused by one ship. The admirals argued. Some demanded a desperate counterattack. Others demanded diplomacy. But the Emperor himself said nothing. He stared at the image of the battleship on the screen, and for the first time in his long reign, his hands trembled. The galaxy had felt the weight of a single human warship. And now, everyone wondered. If this was just one, how many more were out there? The Grand Fleet was broken. The proudest symbol of the Empire's strength had scattered like dust before the storm. Yet the human battleship did not pursue the survivors. It remained in orbit for a moment longer, watching, silent as a shadow carved from the stars. Then slowly, it turned and continued its path through Imperial space as though nothing had happened. But for the galaxy, everything had changed. News traveled faster than light. Traders carried whispers across systems. Smugglers spread rumors through the hidden channels of black markets. Even before official reports could be censored, the story had already escaped. One ship. One human ship had defied the Empire, humiliated its fleets, and spoken words that shook the hearts of billions. In the Empire's great cities, citizens whispered in streets and alleys. Old men recalled stories of humanity from ancient records, small, fragile creatures weak compared to most alien species. Children repeated the word in wonder, human. The more the Empire tried to erase the rumors, the louder they became. Outside the Empire, hope flickered where it had been long dead. Rebellions began to stir in colonies once thought crushed forever. Leaders of minor civilizations, long silent in fear, began to send secret envoys to search for humans. Even the old rivals of the Empire, their greatest enemies, waited in silence, unsure whether to fear or to rejoice. The galaxy was trembling not because of war, but because of the unknown. The battleship itself moved like a phantom. It entered system after system, ignoring fleets, ignoring threats, scanning worlds as though gathering records of every injustice. Each time it appeared, the voice spoke again. Calm, human, we are watching. The age of fear is ending. The words spread far beyond the Empire's reach. On desert planets, slaves whispered them in secret. On frozen moons, miners carved them into stone. On lush worlds, farmers looked to the stars with new hope. The message was simple, yet unstoppable. Meanwhile, inside the Empire's High Council, chaos reigned. Admirals argued for another attack. Ministers demanded secrecy. Some begged for peace, though they dared not say the word surrender. The Emperor himself spoke little, his once proud face shadowed with doubt. He knew what the others refused to admit. The Empire had already lost. Not in numbers, not in territory, but in spirit. The human battleship had shown that the Empire's fear was no longer absolute. And without fear, the Empire's chains would break. Still, the admirals insisted. They spoke of traps, of new weapons, of secret technologies that might match the humans. We will rebuild, they shouted. We will prove our strength again. But even as they spoke, the broadcasts arrived. Across every channel, the human voice returned one last time. This is not conquest. This is warning. Tyranny does not last. Those who live by fear will fall by it. The future belongs to those who endure, to those who choose hope over chains. The voice faded. The battleship turned, its engines flaring with strange light, and then, before the eyes of billions, it vanished into deep space. No one knew where it had gone. Some said it returned to human worlds hidden beyond the stars. Others believed it traveled alone, a sentinel watching from the shadows. But all knew one truth. It was not gone forever. It had left its mark. On the border stations, soldiers who had once mocked the intruder now stood in silence, unable to meet each other's eyes. On the streets of imperial cities, children painted the image of the strange ship on walls before guards tore it down. On distant colonies, rebels raised banners with a single word written across them: humanity. The Empire trembled, and the galaxy trembled with it, because now everyone knew the truth. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity was not weak. Humanity had endured in silence, hidden in shadows, and returned stronger than any empire could imagine. One battleship had entered Imperial space. One battleship had broken the pride of the galaxy's greatest power. And somewhere in the darkness, more might be waiting. The galaxy would never again look at the stars the same way, for in the silence of space they now saw not emptiness, but the shadow of a race that had